Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about something I call an experiential metaphor and how to use them in game design. Or the alternative title of this is what God of War, breaking up and getting a tattoo have in common. And they do have something in common. Namely their experiential gestalt. So this is about modeling what something feels like, not just how it works, not the meaning within it purely, but when enacting it in the game, how the actual gameplay, due to its experiential structure, its experiential gestalt, can make the player feel on a moment-to-moment basis. There are some examples for this right from the start, so you can start wrapping your head around this. Have you ever played a game or a sequence of a game, a part of a game where you thought, wow, what I'm doing here feels exactly like something else from real life? For example, when I played this grappling hook sequence in God of War, it felt exactly like breaking up. Why? This is so weird. Because of its experiential gestalt, because of the structure of this experience, of trying to hold on to something, not knowing what the future would bring. Where is this next grappling hook that I can, or where is this next point where I can shoot my grappling hook to? Letting go, being in free fall, latching on to the next point, or panicking and latching on to the previous one. So the structure of uncertainty, the structure of transition, very much like a breakup, very much like getting a haircut, very much like getting a tattoo, very much like quitting a job and finding a new one, very much like moving. All of the life transitions, big or small, to some extent, share a similar gestalt. That's why we can understand one of them in terms of the other. If we do that, if we understand the grappling hook sequence in God of War as breaking up, for example, some other transitional experience, then we would talk about an experiential metaphor. One experience is understood in terms of another. A very famous example is also Janet Murray's reading of Tetris. When she played Tetris, it was to her like a modern rain dance. She said it's a symbolic enactment of the overtasked lives of modern Americans, or anybody, really. But she talked about it in the cultural context of the very stressed out American. And the clearing tasks off your desk, the constant onslaught of new tasks, does indeed, when you think about it, share structural elements with playing Tetris. You just try to make room for the next wave of things that come along. You try to shift things into order and be kind of strategic about it, finding the synergies between tasks. Where does it fit so I can get most of it off my desk or off my row in the most efficient manner? So there is, while this was not the intent of either of these games to evoke these kinds of experiences, I'm sure, their structure still allows us to make these connections. And we can use this deliberately when we design games. We can use the experiential structure of a game to evoke these experiences deliberately in players. There's no guarantee this will happen, of course. As I think I said before, and hopefully we talked about it at this point in class, it always depends very much on what stands out to a player, how they experience their life right now, how ready they are to perceive these metaphors in a game. But nevertheless, we can aim for it, we can design for it, and we can support our messages in the game, and we have other contextual elements in the game, like the fictional element of it, and the music, and the theming, and any explicit title that we might give it, to gear the interpretation of a player towards one thing more than the other. And then if we also have a fitting experiential structure in the game, an experiential metaphor in it, that can further support or undermine our message. Quick reminder, I already said it, the essence of metaphor is understanding and experiencing one kind of thing in terms of another. And so for experiential metaphors, this means understanding a gameplay experience as some other real-life experience that shares salient structural characteristics with the gameplay experience. Johnson and Lakoff, who I draw on extensively when I talk about metaphors, say we understand our experiences in terms of image schemata. And an image schema has a characteristic experiential gestalt. This experience looks like this. It's a schema, an image schema. It has this kind of typical characteristic structure. And it's sort of important to understand these terms or the theory behind them, how they work, what they actually mean, to be able to approach our experiences in real life in a systematic and analytical manner, so we can model them in a game. We know what we're dealing with. It just hones our ability to pinpoint precisely and exactly what parts we need to hit, what structures we can set up to evoke a certain experience for a player. An example, compulsive force schema. Compulsive force is an image schema that is very pervasive in our life. It's everywhere. We come across it everywhere. And we usually don't really notice because it's so pervasive. And it has this structure. There is some kind of force, physical or emotional, mental, can be anything. But since we understand our experiences first and foremost through our physical being in the world as humans, and then map all the abstract experiences onto that, let's start with the physical to understand what the compulsive force schema means. Because the physical is where all of these image schematas first and foremost originated. This is where they come from. And then we apply them to more abstract things to make sense of them. So there is a physical force and it builds up, it gains momentum, and then it hits on something, the force is released in that moment, and there is an impact, a consequence that happens through that. So it has this very typical structure of force building up, encountering another object, and then a consequence to that. Experiences with compulsive force gestalt. Angry Birds has a compulsive force image schema. It's an experiential gestalt that has the structure of this compulsive force image schema. You pull back, you build up the physical force, you unleash it, you unleash your birdie impacts with the house, and there's damage afterwards. Or bowling, same thing. You draw back the ball and then you unleash it. The force builds up as the ball rolls towards the pins. It impacts with the pins, it collides with the pins, and there is a consequence to this, a release of that force. Now so these were two physical examples. Thinking of this in a metaphorical way, group pressure, peer pressure, can also have an experiential gestalt of compulsive force. Do this, come, join us, do the stupid thing. And maybe you don't want to, but the peer pressure is a building up of a force and coming from the outside, but building up internally if you are susceptible to that. And it gets so strong that eventually you might end up doing the stupid thing that others want you to do. And then there's a release of that force and the consequence. So spike pit rules, come on, dude, stand out there. Don't stand out there, come to us into the spike pit. And you really want to be in that spike pit because the pressure is so huge now, and you jump into the spike pit. Okay, it's a stupid example. But you see what I mean? There is this same structural component to it as with the other compulsive force schema that are grounded in physicality. it can also apply to emotional and mental concepts and inner concepts that are much more abstract. So this would be an example of compulsive force that is being interrupted. This little guy has no chance against the sumo wrestler. There might be a buildup of force, but that force isn't very strong. There is an impact, but there is not really a release because it's stopped right there. And this happens all the time, that we have some kind of image schema in our head because we made the experience, our head remembered it, our brain remembered it. We now know that this experiential structure exists. We started seeing it elsewhere. And then we suddenly make a new experience that starts like something we know, and with certain expectations that this is how it will all play out this time as well. But then something goes wrong, something's different. And then our brains do something remarkable. They learn, and they save this new experience as a variation of that gestalt. It becomes a new image schema. And that's how our conceptual understanding of the world grows and becomes more nuanced and more complex. So we don't just rely on recognizing image schemas that we learned at some point, and also those we had to learn at some point. We can constantly adjust it and constantly learn new ones, while still having the benefit of our brain knowing the shortcut. Oh, I know this type of experience. I've been there before. I understand what's going on here. This is nothing new. But then when it is something new, we still can understand that as something new as well and expand our experiential vocabulary. Now, the older we get, the harder this becomes. And I think this is why children their brains are very plastic. Their brains are able to deal with a lot of new experiences and grow enormously. And they don't have that many preconceptions that constrain them in how they see the world. And the older we get, the harder it is to break out of these learned experiences that we've had over and over and over again. And we start trying to force more and more the new stuff that we learn into known structures. So you don't have to learn any more new stuff. That's also always a little unsettling and scary. So be mindful of that to keep your plasticity in place. And to just pay attention, where do you fall into these traps where you think this is exactly what I know from before? Maybe in relationships, this is exactly the behavior I've seen 1,000 times. It's a schema, a script that has run 1,000 times. But maybe this time your partner is trying to do something else and you don't recognize it because you already have such strong expectations. So being open to how our experiences change or how new things happen in our environment that might look like some other experience but are actually something else. It's a good skill to cultivate for a game designer. This I would like you to do on your own. So a little challenge for you where you can pause the video and just think on this for a little bit. I would like you to identify 3 very different but concrete experiences that share this, we call it a non-propositional experiential structure. Non-propositional means there is no inherent meaning yet. The structure is neither good nor bad. It's just a structure. What it is specifically is filled by the context. So it's filled by what exactly fills the structure, what exactly is the content of it. So it's not, it's neither good nor bad. And the structure is, as I said before, a compulsive force. So build up of a force, release of that force, and impact of that force. These 3 components need to be there. And they should be there in a way that they're condensed enough, close enough together, that one can really understand this experience as a distinct experiential gestalt. If you say, well, if there's too much time that passes, for example, between these things, it's very often hard to understand the structure. The structure gets lost if there is a lot of noise in between. So maybe oh, when I was a child, I dreamt of doing this. And then when I was in my 20s, suddenly this reoccurred to me. And I went out and I got a degree in this field that I dreamt of when I was 5. Oh, and now I made this invention due to that when I'm in my 40s. So in retrospect, you could possibly argue that there is a compulsive force, experiential gestalt here, or image schema here. But it might be really hard in the moment-to-moment lived experience to pick up on that. So think of things that are a little bit more contained and closer together, and all the elements have to be consequently linked to each other. So you cannot suddenly introduce a new type of force that comes in, because then you're breaking the structure. So it has to be the same force that carries forward. So with the dream as the 5-year-old that then goes on to study something and then has the big breakthrough even later in life, that could actually work from a narrative standpoint to be an illustration of this experiential gestalt, if the force that's built up is that kind of inner drive and inner motivation. That's the one consistent element. But it's just a little bit harder to see. Sorry about this. I had some snafu with my internet. Okay, I hope we are back in business. So this is just another physical example of the buildup of force, release, and impact. The force that's being built up here is the water, and then the dam breaks, and then you have the wreckage afterwards. Okay. Yeah, I'm curious to hear what you come up with. Bring some of these examples to our session when we do a Zoom check-in. I'm excited to hear what you have in mind. So why should we care as game designers? Why should we pay attention to these experiential gestalts or image schemata in games? And there are 4 reasons that I would like to bring to your attention. So first of all, there is a potential impact of a game's experiential gestalt, what it feels like to play the game on a moment-to-moment basis, on the game's fictional meaning. So the gestalt, that experiential gestalt of playing it, can undermine or support the message of the game. In Angry Birds, I would argue the gestalt very strongly supports the fiction. It's a very perfect mapping of the fictional framing onto the experiential gestalt, because you are enacting the mechanics of vengeance. It's why Angry Birds feels so good in a way, and is also quite addictive. So the fictional framing is eggs are being stolen, birds get really angry, and then you cultivate that wrath. You build up and you cultivate wrath. Ah, I'm so mad. I want to get back at these pigs. And you build up that force, that wish to get revenge on them. Build up the momentum, actually emotionally and physically in the game through the slingshot. And then you unleash the wrath. There is a moment of blind fury and lack of control. When you really think of flying off the handle, if you get so super mad that you lose your grip, you don't have a lot of control. You say stuff you don't want to say. You say stuff you would rather take back later, but you cannot unsay it. So there is this moment that actually might feel super good right now because you're just so pissed. But you cannot steer it anymore. It has taken control of you. And it's the same thing. Birdie flies off and you see, oh shit, I didn't really aim it in the right way. This was not the surgical strike that I had in mind. It's just doing something now. And so you release the force and then you hope for the best. And then either, and that's really gratifying, there is big, huge destruction. You see the impact of your force. Ha, gotcha, piggies. I got back at you. Or there is a lot of frustration because of the lack of impact. So in either way, either you want to do it again because it felt great, there was this loss of control, but hooray, it worked out just fine. Or it's like, this time it didn't work at all, so I have to do it again. And the clever thing here is you can see how you went off, so you can build a hypothesis on how to do it better the next time, which we do not get so much in real life. If you fly off the handle in real life, there is nobody who tells you, gives you feedback on how you could have handled it better. You have to figure this out yourself, usually. But this being a game, it has good interface design, and it helps you build a hypothesis about what you can do better next time, which makes you want to come back to it more. Okay, so good alignment between the fictional framing of this and the physical enactment of the experiential gestalt. Okay, but there are also examples where the gestalt somehow undermines the message and there is a mismatch, and it's kind of weird and jarring maybe. I would like you to also pause the video and watch this little YouTube clip on American McGee's Little Red Riding Hood. You don't have to watch the whole thing. I think it's 36 minutes. If you watch the first few minutes until you see a little bit of the gameplay, that should be more than enough. I just want you to get the idea of what this game is about and what it claims to be about. So on the story level, American McGee's Little Red Riding Hood is about setting the record straight. Little girls would not survive in the woods. So they say this is all crap and we have to now tell the real story. On the gameplay mechanics level, it's very simply about making the cute fairyland dirty and to spread anarchy and chaos. Now, on the experiential gestalt level, it's an entirely different story. So if you look at the mechanics and the goal of the conflict of Little Red Riding Hood, you have this creature, the Grimm character, and his goal is to convert fairyland from cute to wild. And you have this success bar here, this progress bar, and you make it smelly, stinky, gross, foul, rotten, nasty, disgusting, repulsive, putrid, rancid, and wild. And you go all the way to wild. And you do this simply by running around, because apparently Grimm is so disgusting that he infects everything and turns everything that lives into skulls and bones and dark, rotten, blah. You can butt stomp. So you would stun the fairy creatures that are trying to clean up after you. And your idle animation is to pee. You just stand around and you pee. Very mature. So you run, you jump, you butt stomp, and you pee. When I played this, I'm fessing up. I did not at all experience the kind of liberation that anarchy and chaos promises. I got a kick out of seeing things turn from one state to the other. And it was kind of interesting to see what they did artistically with this game. However, when I played it, it reminded me incredibly of the gratification that I get when I clean my apartment. Because it is not different. It has a different fictional layer. It tells me that it's different. It looks different, but it's not different. So the structure is the same. You turn a status quo that concerns numerous elements or has a spatial component that must be changed. You turn the status quo into a status B. So status B shall take status A's place. In the case of Little Red Riding Hood, status A is everything is cute and pretty and neat and nice, and it should become rancid and vile and gross and disgusting. When I clean my apartment, I aim for the opposite effect. So an action needs to be taken to change A to B. In the game, the action you take is you run, jump, butt stomp, and pee to convert it. And the action I take is I also run through my place and try to reach every single corner of it and chase the dust bunnies and vacuum and whatnot. So I also try spatially to reach every part of it. I don't butt stomp like Grimm, but I also feel like I have to fight the force that is trying to subvert my efforts. So he is trying to stall the creatures that clean up after him, and I'm trying to stall the creatures that make everything messy again. The cats that run in and out, our son that clutters stuff up again when I just clean, comes in with dirty shoes, or yeah, whatever. So there is always, when you're cleaning, some force that is trying to subvert your efforts right away. So you should move out immediately after you cleaned your place. And apparently Grimm has the exact same problem, even though he aims for anarchy and chaos. To me, this is really weird, and this is really undermining the whole experience that this game promises. So the conflict in both instances of this would be conversing that the conversion requires effort. There is an element of resistance or an antagonistic force that undermines conversion efforts. So on the one hand, the creatures that make everything dirty again. On the other hand, the creatures that try to keep everything clean. So yeah, you play a game about making everything dirty, and you are enacting a gestalt that is incredibly reminiscent of cleaning. And since cleaning is more pervasive in real life than trying to make everything dirty, we can assume that when you play this game, this might come to mind more and sort of mess with the experience than the anarchy and chaos that it promises to evoke. So be careful about what is the gestalt and what could it be reminiscent of, and what does it share with other gestalts that, or other meanings of the gestalt, other instances of the gestalt that are out there and that are very common, and that could give a very different spin on the experience that you want to convey, or the meaning you want to convey with your game. So the second reason as game designers we should pay attention to experiential gestalts is that the gestalt can create a very dubious subtext to your game. This is a really old game. It's a really problematic game. And I don't know if you know it, but please look it up, Google it, try to find a video or read up on it. It's a Christian game. And I don't want to make any statements about religion or anything. I just want to talk about the experiential gestalt that is enacted here and the signals that it sends on a meaning level. So it's called Left Behind Eternal Forces. And the gestalt is also very much like cleaning. The goal is that you have to convert people with different beliefs to your own belief. You can also play from it's funny because you can choose whether you play from the side of the forces of evil, or you can play on the side of the forces of good, and it's the exact same gameplay. So that tells you a lot. But if you play on the Christian side, your goal would be to get people to convert to your belief, and you have to click on them so they pray. You kind of click them, you reduce their hit points into submission until they fall on their knees and they pray. They're kind of enlightened, and then you have to keep reminding them to pray so they don't convert back to the evil side. The conflict is that the people resist conversion. So they are on a timer and they will convert back unless you keep reminding them. So you keep kind of reducing their hit points again. So they remember how they're supposed to think and feel. And your core mechanics are you destroy their belief, whether this is the belief in good or evil, depending on the side you choose, by reducing hit points to 0. Then you make them pray. I convert. Or if that doesn't work, you can kill them. Just eliminate the non-believers. Interesting message for a game with a religious background. So the implied meaning of this Gestalt, which I find really extra, I mean, if this wasn't bad enough, I find this really extra problematic, is in the cleaning Gestalt, it's very, very clear that the status quo, A, the dirt, is undesirable. It's denoted negative. We absolutely do not want to have it. And the status B is declared desirable. It's denoted positive. Yes, I would very much like to get rid of all the dirt and the dust and the Schmutz. The emotional experience of that Gestalt is coupled to the goal of getting status A to status B. It's satisfying, it's gratifying, it's great. There is zero room for reflection or doubt. Yes, please, I wanted to go from A to B. And the antagonistic force, what resists these efforts, is very easily established as the enemy. Like, I'm not having negotiations with my dust bunnies. They go in the trash. The behavior of the antagonistic force is met with righteous anger, scrubbing angrily at the smudge. And since clear values have been ascribed to status A and B, you are completely circumventing any kind of reflection and doubt. This is just totally eliminated. So there is only one right course of action that must not be questioned. I think if you're making a game about any kind of belief systems that sets up a Gestalt like this, where it's so black and white, there is no room to see the other side's reasoning, there is no room to challenge or question anything. I mean, yes, that can be very much in the interest of the creators here, the designers, pretty sure it was. But I would argue that we might not necessarily want to do that, or we should be mindful that this is in fact what we are doing, and we are eliminating any kind of dialogue, and we are sending this really drastic message. So the third aspect, the third thing, the third reason to pay attention to experiential gestalts in game design, it can increase a game's personal resonance if you use experiential gestalts from real life deliberately in a game context. So I have this argument that we gravitate to certain games or certain game genres, certain styles of gameplay, certain experiential gestalts really in games, because there is something on our mind that needs to be enacted. Something that we might not be fully conscious of, but a need that we have that we really want to enact through the game. And all games evoke experiential gestalts in some way or another. So I have a friend, and he played tower defense games a lot when he felt overwhelmed in real life. And it's because a tower defense game has a structure of planning ahead and keeping the sea at bay. Orcs Must Die was the example of choice here, but it can be other tower defense games as well. Think about what kinds of games do you play, and when do you play them, and can you find any correlation between when you are gravitating to a certain style of game and what need there might be that must be satisfied in a moment? So for a while I found playing shooter games, I'm not very good at them, but the ones that are paced in the right way, I actually really enjoyed, not because I like blowing stuff up. That wasn't really the main appeal. It was taking focused, targeted action. It was about focusing. So when I had issues focusing on anything, I just felt overwhelmed, that the quietness of in the moment and targeting and having this kind of surgical strike moment, that was the experience that I needed to enact. And that was the gestalt that was modeled in the game in these kinds of shooter games. So think about what that might be for you and how you could use this when you're creating an experience. What do you want somebody to be able to symbolically enact in your game? And how can you also reinforce that possibly through the theming of the game throughout and the fiction of the game and the art design of it? And it doesn't have to be obvious, but it could. You can use this as a tool. And the fourth reason is that if you can pinpoint an experiential gestalt that is the structural skeleton of your game, it can give you a lot of creativity, freedom of creativity and experimentation without losing sight of the whole thing, without having a lot of very different prototypes, for example, to try out an idea. You can use it to fine-tune an idea and find really the exact fit for a metaphor, for example. So when we made Elude, the game on depression that should communicate to friends and relatives of people who struggle with depression, what some salient aspects of the experience feel like, I very quickly landed on this up and down metaphor. So good mood is up, bad mood is down. And the conflict is in the mood struggle is an antagonistic force that tries to get you from your goal of being up, if being in a good mood, to being in a down mood. There is some force that works against you as you're trying to make your way up to a good mood. And it does feel like a struggle and like there is, something really working against you. And so this is really super simple, but it was the structural basis for the entire design, for the core of the gameplay. You try to get up, something is trying to bring you down. But as simple as this sounds, this can be implemented in very different ways. There are still a lot of open questions to be answered and a lot of different ways in how this antagonistic force could play out and could be implemented. So one of the early prototypes that the team made that I worked with was you're jumping on these platforms and the platforms themselves constantly move downward. So if you're trying to reach the top of the screen, but the platforms on which you land always go down, and you have to be fast enough to scramble your way up by jumping from platform to platform before you're carried below the bottom of the screen. And while this made for actual quite, stressful but quite compelling gameplay, it didn't totally capture that experience that I wanted to capture about depression. Yes, it might feel like you're in quicksand, but we also didn't want to send a message that you are never on any kind of stable ground, that your very basis is what constantly falls apart and constantly drags you down. So we tried a different approach. And also, actually, one of the reasons was when people played it, it was also too much fun because there was too much individual challenge in trying to navigate these platforms and jump from one to the other. So it weirdly didn't really feel like you struggled against that force to go up. It was just, if I'm just faster and time this better, I can actually do this. So we modeled fun in a way more than the experience of depression. And then we took another approach where the idea was you had to climb up a waterfall and make it to the top of the waterfall, and the force working against you was the water coming down. And that's a quite literal interpretation of there's an antagonistic force that's trying to bring you down. We see this gestalt in real life. This is a physical representation of this gestalt in real life. But the way it works with the metaphor is that the thing, if we have this up-down metaphor where up is good and down is bad, the thing that is trying to bring you down is located in your happy place. So the water that's coming down from the waterfall is the force lives on top. It's up. So if you try to get up to your happy place and the thing that pushes you down is coming from the happy place, it's almost like your happiness is trying to bring you down. And that didn't make any sense either. So while the struggle against that force is trying to push you was there, the component was there, it was still not exactly the right metaphor. It didn't feel right. It didn't fit all the dimensions we wanted it to fit. So then the last attempt and what we actually ended up making was, you have a stable environment. There is this forest and the branches stay stuck. They don't move down when you jump on them. They are what they are. And you can make it to the top of the trees, and then there is a kind of freedom, free form play, happy state that you can reach, which is timed, and it will be over at some point without you messing anything up. It's just your mood will come down eventually. And the force that works against you is coming from where it should be coming. It's coming from down below. It's the darkness and the doubts and the things, the evil things in the undergrowth that come to get you. They come after you. You could be free, you could be up there, you could be happy, it could be enjoyable, but there is something that's making its way from down below and it drags you down. It's not pushing you down from above. It's coming from below and it drags you down. And this is what you're trying to escape. This is what you're trying to stay ahead of. And in the first level, you have a chance to do so. And then afterwards, we made one where you just, no matter how much you try, it will suck you down. It's not a matter of willpower. It's not a matter of skill. It will just get at you. Yeah, so these are the different things to consider, keep in mind, and think about when you harness the power of experiential gestalts. How does it map with your meaning? Does it support it? Does it undermine it? How does the structure allow you to create psychological resonance with somebody else? Like how do you want to appeal to certain needs that people have when they play these games? And also, how can it open up your experimental space where you try out different approaches to a same basic structural idea to see which one really hits all the nuances the best. And gestalts are everywhere. Keep your eyes open and try to find them wherever you go, and then think about how would that translate into a games experience. So your next assignment is a team check-in, October 12th. Then we don't have class on the 15th because I'm in this training. And then October 19th, we do the presentations and the critique of your personal issue game prototype. And also your write-ups are due on Student Portalen. Please read the assignment descriptions, as always, that you can find on Student Portalen as well. Thank you so much. That was a long one. I'm looking forward to receiving your questions and possibly, your examples to different image schemata that you have, and to have a good, fruitful discussion. This is a lot of new material.